gonna sit so. Alright, and on the next episode of Feline Opinionated, we get opinionated about the books we read in 2023. And we've read a lot of books each. So we're just going to talk about our top 5 of the year. They didn't have to be written or published then. It's just the ones that we read and went, yeah, this is for us. So, Suze, what was your 5th placer?
My 5th place is called The Blade Itself by Joe Abercrombie. And it's part of a trilogy. And yeah, I've been wanting to read it for quite a while, and I've just been kind of putting it off. And then I got gifted it. So I started reading it, and it took me a while to get into it just because Joe Abercrombie has a different writing style than I'm used to. He's very kind of, you're going to get invested in these characters before anything actually happens to the plot. So it's a lot of kind of getting used to the different characters and also some world building, but not a lot of it. And so it took me a good, 2/3 of the book to really kind of get invested in the world and the characters, because obviously I've never read anything by him before I read The Blade Itself, and all the other books that I'm used to reading are much more like, oh yeah, this is the basic plot, then you're gonna learn about the characters. But it's definitely, that is the complete opposite the way Joe writes.
Case in point, the first thing that happens to Harry Potter is he goes to Hogwarts and then he meets the characters. Yeah. And this is the opposite way around.
Oh, yeah, it's completely the opposite. If you like grimdark violence especially, good God, this is the book for you.
Is this the one where the guy ripped out teeth on one side, and then opposing teeth on the other, so he went odd, even on the top row, and then even odd, so that when the guy chewed, he literally shredded his own gums?
Yeah, basically.
Yes! You told me about this, I remember. So there's the kind of violence you're into, it's gritty, it's grim, it's bloody. I haven't read it myself yet. Suze did, she told me about it.
Yeah, definitely. I don't know if you'd like it, just because it is so character focused.
And I need things to move forward. I am very plot driven.
Yeah, but it is, I think if you gave it a go,
I'd give it a shot easily. Next time I come, you'll have to lend me that one. We'll do another book swap.
Yeah, so yeah, that's my number 5. So what's yours?
I agonized over putting this in 5th place. It is Transformers More Than Meets the Eye, Volume 2 by James Roberts. Oh, and the only reason this is in 5th place and not 1st, where it rightfully belongs, is because it's Volume 2 and the better stuff happens in the later volumes. This is very much just past the introduction. Yeah, I read Volume 1 and Volume 2. Volume 1's okay because, this is the series that got me into Transformers, the comics anyway, because Grace did this to me and turned me into a monster. I've now seen just about every iteration of Transformers and read quite a lot of it too. But this series is so funny to me because James Roberts, who wrote this one, went, well, all the Transformers are basically male because if you know Transformers, they hid their women on another planet and lost the planet. That's genuinely a plot line. They find it in the series. They get more women. So on this ship, there's only one female at the start. And so he just started making everyone gay. And he was like, these guys are in a gay relationship. These guys are in a gay relationship. Everyone's in a gay relationship. And then Hasbro, who published the comics, IDW and Hasbro, were like, James, we need you to make a straight couple. And he was like, with what? Right, so they gave him, this is when they found the women in the series later on, and they gave him 2 free women to work with, and he was like, yeah, 2 women. We'll make them gay. And then Hasbro were like, James, we gave you those for straight relationships. And he was just like, they've been on a planet full of women for years. If you think they're straight. And then he gave us one straight couple. No, 2, sorry. And then one was became a trans woman, so they weren't straight anymore. And the other, literally, they were this straight relationship is two of the characters, and then one of them loses the memory of the other, and they don't get back together. So sorry, I adore the Transformers more than Meets the Eye comics, but this series is special because it's sort of the first series. It's now 12 or 13 years old, wherein they leave the war stories behind. Like, it's the end of the Cybertronian Autobot Decepticon war, and it's the consequences of fighting for all that time. And so Rodimus, who was previously Hot Rod, he basically goes and he takes his crew, the Lost Light, to try and find Cyber Utopia, because he's so sick of the mess that has become Cybertron and he can't deal with it anymore, and he needs a purpose after he's been fighting for so long. And so if you're into Transformers at all and want to get into a Transformers, this might not be the best starting place because it's after the war, but if you are sick of seeing the war part in the cartoons and want to start something new, go into this with an open mind, open heart. It's a wonderful series. But yeah, Volume 2 is just, again, it deserves to be higher up, but I read a lot of good books this year in 2023. Suze, spot 4?
Number 4 is Before They Are Hanged, which is the second book from the Joe Abercrombie series. And yeah, the only reason why number 3 isn't on this list is because I haven't read it yet. I guarantee all 3 of them would have been in my top 5 if I'd have read the whole trilogy, but I kind of just, reasons I did not read the whole trilogy. But yeah, Before They Are Hanged is much more of a plot-driven book, still very much based on the characters, but it's a bit more plot-driven because now you've had a book to get invested in their characters, and you're just kind of like, oh yeah, this is what you think they're like, but actually they're not. So you get like completely different sides of the characters for reasons that happen in the book. Like there's this one guy who, like, the guy that you're supposed to hate because his job is actually to torture people. Like, that is his job. He works for, they call it the Inquisition, but it's basically like the police. And he is basically a torturer, so he just maims people for a living. And you're supposed to hate him, but he's the good guy.
Oh my God. Do you know what? I know you were saying that, and that's like a really cool detail. It's fantastic because it's such a. I feel like a lot of modern day readers are missing the sort of. I'm not trying to insult people, but like missing the literary comprehension to go. Like, villains can be interesting. Like, a lot of time people go, well, he believes in this, and it's just like, yeah, just because he believes in that doesn't mean the author believes in it, or it doesn't mean that, you know, you have to believe in it. You've just got to follow the character.
Yeah.
Like, okay, like, in one of my books I've got this, I'm trying to break into writing. I've got a white Christian man who believes in gay conversion camps. It doesn't mean I do. He's the villain. You're supposed to hate him, but I'm just like, there's going to be people who come at me like, hey, you included this in your book and that's bad. And I'm like, yes it is. And you've got like this torturer who is the good guy, and people are going to be like, they also believe in torture. No.
Yeah. So Before They Are Hanged is basically kind of, it's set right after the first book. It's
I know where it cut off. Hold on, sorry. We got cut off there, so this is going to be a bit of a rough edit. But Susie was just saying why Before They Were Hanged is good.
Yeah. So yeah, it's at the end of the first book they get given a quest, and in the second book it's basically the characters going on the quest. Some of them get some character development, which is quite interesting. Some of them get character development, which is just like, wait, what? Excuse me? Not in a bad character development way, but it's just Joe Abercrombie is very good at being like, oh, this is what you think this person's gonna do? Oh, you have no idea. I
love batshit crazy people. Yeah. Like, it's like whenever I read a Christina Henry book and she just goes ape. Oh my gosh. She's like, if for anyone who's like in this, I didn't actually get any of her books on my list this year because I didn't read many Christina Henry this year. I read like one. So yeah, but if you get a chance, she does fairy tale retelling. She's very dark. I just feel like I should mention that because I brought her up. And yeah. Okay, so my fourth book was one that you gave me. I'm sorry, gave me, no, cursed me with. Pax.
Yay!
Sara Pennypacker. I was expecting the Fox and the Hound. You know, Fox and the Hound, like a little happy story. Oh, look at this cute little fox. It's heartbreaking. It is heartbreaking. All right, so without spoiling the plot, it is about a little boy whose father is going to war, and he has a pet fox called Pax, who he found when he was a kid, and there was no one to take care of him. And so the dad knows that the grandfather won't accept this fox when he has to leave this child with his grandfather, and so he makes him abandon the fox at the side of the road. And then he drives him over 100 miles away from Pax. And his kid doesn't even last a night. He knows what he's done is wrong and he's freaking out about it. And he tries to go on a journey to find Pax. But if you're thinking this is a very homeward bound situation, you would be wrong. This is it is aimed at young audiences. But at the same time, it's really rooted in how awful war is and how it destroys everything. There is not a thing it does not touch. It will touch nature. It will get your families. It will get your mind and your life. One of the characters in it, she is an ex-soldier who fought in one of the previous wars, and literally all she thinks about is how much they turned her into a killing machine and how easily pliable she was at the time and how she wishes she could take it back after she saw someone's life end. And so like this is it's like a really grim take on it, but I thought that was such an elegant way to describe war to children. I was so invested in everything that happened and I cried so much. This is your fault, Suzie. You gave me this book. It's a short book, but if you're in for a little tearjerker, Pax by Sara Pennypacker is just, it's spectacular. And I've got the sequel to read, but I'm too scared to read it. So, number 3.
My number 3, you're going to be very happy about this, is Eragon.
Yay! Christopher Paolini! I've been trying to get Suzie to read this for ages. It's that she didn't want to, it's that she didn't have the books and we live quite far apart, so our book swaps last a while.
Yep.
But go ahead, this is your book to talk about. I'm just going to sit and freak out. Oh, one thing I am going to say, you always know a book's going to be good when it has a map for the first page.
Oh, right? A map in a book is like crack to me. I'm just like... It's
like curry with fish and chips. You don't need it, but it's nice to have.
Oh god, but yeah, no, Eragon, it's a book that I've wanted to read for so long, but I've just never really got around to it. I didn't have the books. There was other books I wanted to read before that and other, you know, reasons why I didn't read it. So at the beginning of last year, I was like, no, that's it. I'm reading it. It's happening. So I read it and I absolutely fell in love. It was fantastic. And yeah, so it's, if you don't know what Eragon is about, it's about basically a boy who gets, for circumstances, finds an egg and a dragon hatches and he becomes a dragon rider. That's basic plot. And he then goes on a quest because people are then hunting down the dragons.
Dragon riders are illegal because the king is the only one allowed a dragon because he hunted them down, which is the whole thing.
Yeah.
That's a backstory. It's not spoilers. You're fine.
Yeah. And then, yeah, and it's basically just following Eragon on his quest. And there's, you know, there's a lot of building, like world building that's excellent. I know a lot of people that, you know, aren't children who read the book are very kind of critical on Christopher Paolini because it's very, You know, he wears his inspirations on his sleeve, which a lot of people bothers a lot of people, but I don't think that's a bad thing.
Yeah, like, it's very grounded in Lord of the Rings.
Oh, yeah. You can definitely tell. Oh, yeah, you were a Lord of the Rings fan.
Yeah,
but
like...
when you realise that he was 17 when it was first published, so he wrote it before he was 17, wow. Like,
which I'd like to point out, this dude's a freak. How do you write that when you're... Like, I'm here trying to get my first book published, and I'm nearly 30, and he's like 17, like a little show up, and I'm like, get out of here, Christopher Paolini, get out! The only one that's worse than that is Terry Pratchett, who wrote when he got his first book published when he was even younger than that.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, no, Eragon really blew me away. I was ready to be like, you know, I'm not going to like this as much as I want to. But no, I did. I loved the characterization. Eragon, I thought it was going to fall into the thing of, oh, because it was, you know, written by a young guy and it's about a young guy, I'm going to be very annoyed with Eragon most of the time. But no, he is the sweetest boy in the world. He's also an idiot.
Symbol.
Yeah. Yeah, he is just so sweet. I love his, you know, relationships with pretty much everybody, like him and obviously his dragon Saphira. I absolutely love their bond. It's not instant, but it's, you know, it comes from more of like a caring place at first, because obviously she's a baby dragon, and then when she gets older, she's just kind of like, no, we have to go and do this stuff. And he's like, yeah, but no, I don't want to. And there's, you know, there's a friction there, and it's just, but then obviously they build such a strong bond. And yeah, it's excellent. I enjoyed it much more than I thought I was going to, hence why it's number 3.
I really should mention that Suze is a dual reader, by which I mean she reads the books and sometimes she listens to the audio alongside them. Like, not at the same time, just sometimes if she doesn't have time to read, she'll, you know, listen to an audiobook instead, or, yeah. Which really unprepared me for the voice of Saphira, and we have laughed very hard and long about that, because Saphira obviously being a dragon. Now, in the books, she talks telepathically to anyone who she wants to talk to. So everyone's imagining this sort of, like, soft woman's voice, but bear in mind, the film is terrible. The Eragon film is awful. Awful film to go alongside this book, but they do have a really good Saphira voice. It's a nice sarcastic woman. Yeah, she's got a lovely voice. But in the audiobooks, it's like Eragon, roar, and she like just is like out with this dragon voice.
I know.
You showed me that in Lost My Mind. We gotta find prom.
Oh, I know. I first, because I like, again, for like people watching, I have quite severe dyslexia, so sometimes when I physically can't read, I listen to the audiobook. Also, I have a job where I walk a lot. I'm a dog walker, so I can't read and walk because I need my hands to, you know, wrangle dogs and stuff. So I usually just put some headphones on and listen to a book if I'm walking. And I was about a third of the way through Eragon, and I got the audiobook, and I just, you know, started it, and I found out where I was, started it from where I left off in, you know, the physical book, and it just, Saphira's voice was the funniest thing in the world. It took me a while to get used to, and it's not an insult to the guy who narrates the book, whose name I cannot remember. But yeah, it's just, it was excellent.
Fantastic directive choice, 10 out of 10.
Definitely. All right, what's your number 3?
My number 3 is, I found it so hard to organise these into the top 5, so these are really close together, but it's The Tower of Nero by Riordan. That's the final book in the Trials of Apollo, which is the 3rd series of the Heroes of Olympus, the Percy Jackson series as it's more commonly referred to.
Mm-hmm.
Since it's a 5th book, there is a lot I will not talk about or say, you know, because, yeah. But overall, the series is about Apollo, the god of music and the sun and archery and a million other things, because that dude couldn't pick a lane. Healing, there's one. Yeah, okay, just didn't pick a lane. Right, he is turned mortal by Zeus as a punishment, and he's turned into a teenager called Lester Papadopoulos, which is an extra ring. This book series was really interesting because in the other Heroes of, like in the other Percy Jackson books, you're hearing it very much from the view of the demigods being forced to carry out the god's will and whims. And in this one, he's a god who has to like hang around with these, some of them are his own kids, and he's now their age or younger, and he feels it too because he feels like a teenager all of a sudden. And he's like, oh god, they're calling me dad, this is weird. But like in the series, he realizes just how much they sacrifice, because as a god, it's so hard for him to look at mortals and look at time in a linear form and go, oh yeah, they're giving up a lot of their lives to do this, or just giving up their lives to try and appease us. And now he has to do it, and he has to live among it and see what's happening. And so it's a really fantastic series. But the fifth, like, I read all of that series in last year. But the Tower of Nero, the fifth book, that one impressed me so much because just all the books culminating into this conclusion was such an amazing thing for me. Like, I know Susie's is favorite is the fourth in that series, because there is a very important scenario at Camp Jupiter wherein there's this funeral that you attend, and it's like absolutely devastating, absolutely horrifying, and it really is. It's, you know, I won't tell you what character or anything, but in the Tower of Nero, obviously Nero's in the title. I didn't think he was going to be as tough a villain as he was. And yet I was like, this dude is horribly intimidating. The way he treats his family is like one of the scariest things that it's just really sad the way he like lives and acts and treats everyone, and the holds he has over people, because he knows exactly how to manipulate you to get you to do what he needs you to do, and then he gaslights everyone into blaming themselves and never once blaming him, which was so interesting to read. Another interesting tidbit of the whole of the Trials of Apollo is that before each chapter, it'll tell you exactly what's going to happen in the form of a haiku, but you can never guess what's going to happen despite the haiku. Like, it foreshadows in just the most comedic way, because another thing he's the god of is poetry. I just really love that one. I just thought it's fantastic. And Uncle Rick is always there to provide something. I'm obsessed with Greek and Roman mythology. I'm trying to get into some other mythologies, and I probably will, but those are my ones I mainly focus on.
Yeah, I think the only reason why none of the Trials of Apollo will be on my list, spoiler alert, is because I've read them technically this year.
Oh, yeah, you did.
So yeah, so that's literally the only reason. Otherwise, the fourth one probably would have been where Eragon was.
Yeah, fair. What about number two? Your number two is?
My number two, I don't have to say much for this because it's already been on your list. It's Pax.
Yay!
Like, so yeah, if you want to hear my thoughts on Pax, go back and watch, listen to Sophie's section of Pax. But yeah, I absolutely adored it. I read it in one day. I picked it up. I was like, a boy has to go back for his fox. That seems like, you know, quite a sad thing. I'm into, like, you know, a quick read because, you know, it's geared towards children, so it's, you know, it's a shorter book. And I was just like, oh yeah, okay, that'll fit me, you know, in a, you know, kind of a gloomy rainy day book. That'll do. And I read it basically in like one sitting. I could not put it down. It was so good, and yeah, it really, really blew me away.
I usually read really quickly, but I had to put it down several times for a couple of days because it really upset me. Crying over foxes.
Yep.
Yeah, okay, so then that brings me to my book 2, which was Bloody Rose by Nicholas Eames. Suzie also got me into the series. Bloody Rose is the second in the series. The third has not yet been written. The first one was Kings of the Wild. Yeah. And that's my favourite in the series, but I read that the year before, so I can't put it here. This one's actually Susie's favourite in the series. We swapped because gays. In the first one, I'm very much into the wizard Moog, who is just such an absolute crackpot, and I'm 90% sure he's ace, just like me. Whereas in this one, it's like, the gays. So we got different aspects of the LGBTQ spectrum, but no. Overall, the book series is about bands who are mercenary bands, and they're trying to be sort of the best that they can. It's like it treats being a mercenary much like music. The first book is based on bands of the 70s, like actual musical bands, and the second book is based off bands in the 80s. So the first book is like how Saga, the Kings of the Wild, came to be the best band, and now they're old and, past their glory days. But it's like, we killed a dragon once, or almost killed a dragon, and we rescued a princess. One of our guys married her, and we did all this amazing stuff. Yeah, and it's how you had to earn your glory, much like in the music industry. And the second book is music in the 80s, how one of the characters has a drug addiction because she can't fight without being high, because it's very much drugs were rooted in music in the 80s, and it's how you had to buy your glory, buy your way to fame. So instead of going out and hunting the monsters that they need to fight, like goblins and kobolds, because this is very much based in D&D for any D&D nerds, it's easier to pay to bring monsters to the arena, and you don't want to die in the arena, so let's starve them and make the fight look good, but really they're a half-starved goblin, so what fight are they going to put up? And Bloody Rose is the main character, and she's the daughter of one of the original members of the band in the first book, and she's really trying to outshine her father, who was Golden Gabe. But it has some really interesting calls. First off, again, if you're a D&D fan, it's got all the monsters you're looking for, all that sort of map and world building. And if you're a fan of music, some of the bands have really interesting names because they're warriors and they're callbacks to music. So it's look, there's the Iron Maiden, there's the Duran twins. They were one of my favorites. I really hope in the next book based in the 90s they have the Backyard Boys or something.
Yeah, that would be amazing.
Those are the boys who only fight in the back streets. That would really amuse me. So yeah, I don't want to spoil too much of it, so I'll stop talking there. But Bloody Rose by Nicholas Eames, absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
It also has a map. Gonna keep happening on them. I wish more books had illustrations.
Oh, I know, right? Can we please get an illustrated version of Bloody Rose? Which, now that you've talked about your number 2, that is my favourite book from last year. So that's my number 1 book.
Oh, there you go. Well, let's hear your opinions on it.
Yeah. Oh God, I loved it. I love that it's it's a much darker version. The Kings of the Wild, the first book, definitely had some dark moments.
But it was more rooted in comedy.
Yeah, and I love Kings of the Wild, but obviously I read that in 2022. But yeah, no, I prefer Bloody Rose just about. It's not it's
really close to me too. It's just I relate more to the characters in the first book.
Yeah, I think the second book is just fantastic. And I love that, Rose just has so much going on that you slowly kind of... She's an ogre. She has layers. Throughout the book, you slowly learn a bit more about her because you're coming to band, Bloody Rose's band, whose name I can't remember. Do you remember what the name is?
I don't remember. I remember Saga from the first one. You keep talking. I'm going to Google this.
Yeah.
I feel like I should remember, but it's been a while since I read it.
Oh, yeah. I read it in, like, February last year? So, yeah. Yeah, no, you're coming to it from a slightly newer perspective because, obviously, our main character becomes the bard for this band, for Bloody Rose's band, and she kind of hero worships them. She's always wanted to be part of a band. She's always wanted to go on. What is it?
It's Fable. It's Fable.
Fable. Thank you. Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't want to interrupt, but I just was like, yeah, there it is.
Yeah, so she's always wanted to be part of a band, and Fable is like her huge heroes. Like, she has such a huge hero worship for Bloody Rose, and on the journey that they go on, she slowly starts to learn, like
glamour life that you expect.
Yeah, like, this isn't as glamorous as I thought it'd be. I mean, are these guys even heroes at this point? Because they're going into basically fixed fights, because the monsters that they're fighting are half-starved and, beaten and
sometimes just straight up paid to lose with the offer of their freedom.
Yeah. And yeah, it's just such a good book. I think it also really has a good thing of, what legacy means. Because, like, Rose's whole entire thing is, I have to be better than my dad. I have to chase the glory that he got, and I have to be better.
Yeah, like when you start with Rose, she's such a two-dimensional character at the start because she's trying to be. She doesn't want anyone to see past that.
Yeah.
And instead, there's so much there as you sort of scrape away at her.
Mm-hmm. And then obviously you have like the other people in the band and you get closer to them and it's just I absolutely loved it. And yeah, it really it obviously was my favorite book of last year. So yeah, yeah,
well done.
I cannot wait for the third one.
I'm very glad we've had two of ours that are on the same list.
Yeah.
I'm very happy. Different orders, but yeah, my number one book, it had to be number one. It really did. It's Alice in Wonderland by Lewis Carroll. I've read this a lot, a lot. I've just reread it again this year, but for if we get to 2024's book list at the end of the year, I obviously won't put it on there again for the sake of fairness, even if I do think it's one of the best books ever written. So I'm researching to do a book based on Alice in Wonderland, which is why I've reread it so many times that it's physically imprinted behind my eyelids when I sleep. I picked Alice in Wonderland, which is the first one, or rather it's called Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. The second one is Through the Looking Glass. I like both of them very much, but the first one's better if you ask me. And I know that this is just a book about madness, and to most people, it won't make a jot of sense. You either love it or hate it. It's quite like Marmite. No one just goes, Alice in Wonderland, that's okay. No, it's a very old language. It's a very odd book. But the whole idea is that it's like that feeling you get when you're a little kid and adults are taking you places that you don't know where the hell you are. You've just been told to come to this party or wherever you're going, or you have to come to this meeting at work because I couldn't find a babysitter for you. And no, now you have to follow the rules there, but you're a kid, so you don't know the rules. So everything they're saying just sounds like gibberish to you, and you can't ask why, you're just supposed to know. All right, so that's what the book is. So when Alice is in Wonderland, she's literally there, and they're like, "Oh, curtsy when you're thinking. It saves time." And she's like, "I don't know why I'm doing this, but an adult is telling me to, so I will curtsy while I'm thinking because supposedly it saves time." And she, like, every time she tries to ask a question or tries to make sense of something, she's told she's stupid or she's ignorant because she doesn't know this. But she's 7.5. That's how old she is in the book. She's 7.5. And sometimes it's just the curiosity of a child straight up leading her to trouble. There's a bit where she straight up kicks the Builder lizard into the sky. She fully just kicks him. She's like, I wonder what will happen if I kick this lizard. And she does. And he goes into the sky, and later he comes back down. And he's a bit disturbed. And she just like looks at him going up, and she's like, I'm really sorry I did that. I don't know why I did that. She's like, just looking at him go like, I mean, they did send him down a chimney after me, but I didn't know that he just straight up, I feel a bit bad about that. And it's just this wonderful experience of being a kid. So that's why I love it so much. I also have a favourite bit, obviously, it's with the Cheshire Cat. The Cheshire Cat and the Mad Hatter are like my characters. One, because the Mad Hatter, to be mad as a hatter comes from a really interesting saying, and I'm really interested in, is it etymology when words come from something? I think that's what it's called. Right, either that or I've just described the studying of bugs. I can't remember which word describes which thing. But to be mad as a hatter is because hatters used to work with Mercury, and because they were working with Mercury, they would often go a bit tapped in the head, a bit mad. And so that's where that saying comes from. I just really like that. No, but the Cheshire Cat, he has this bit where he's describing how all dogs are sane and all cats are insane. And Alice is like, how do you come to that answer? Like, where's your reasoning? And he's like, oh, think about it this way. Dogs wag their tails when they're happy and growl when they're mad. Cats growl when they're happy and wag their tails when they're mad. And she's like, I think it's called purring. And he's like, I know what I'm talking about. I am a cat. It's just such funny wordplay and funny rhyming schemes. And it's very built up in British culture. Like the Queen of Hearts is just Queen Victoria. And it's just such a fascinating book to me. I'm obsessed with it. Yeah. So there'll never be a day I don't love that book. You know, if you've got the patience to read an old book that doesn't make sense and just goes from one scene to another with no tie, no tail, no nothing, just goes on and on just for the fun of it, then I highly recommend you read these. And they have some really beautiful art by, I can only remember his second name, Tenniel. Mr. Tenniel, I think I have his name here. John Tenniel. Yeah, John Tenniel. There we go. Because again, art and books, I don't think art should just be limited to children's books. I want art in our books. I want art in adult books. But it's always just in children's books, and I do appreciate it. Yeah. Yeah. So, there's our top 5 books each, or top 10 books collectively of 2023. Yeah. Which sums up a nice reading, yeah.
Yes, definitely. Definitely. And fingers crossed we get even better books this year.
Yeah. Well, nothing's going to top Alice in Wonderland. That's just Alice in Wonderland. Oh, again, if I'd read Christina Henry's Alice this year instead of like a couple of years ago, that would have been in there.
Yeah, definitely.
For everyone who is listening to this, I will put a list of these books in the comments so you can take a look into them.
Yeah.
I
recommend all 10.
Yes, frankly, Pax particularly. I mean, I know it's not my top, but if you're looking for a quick read, that's, oh my gosh.
Yeah, definitely.
So I was on both of our lists, and instead of Bloody Rose, which is on both of our lists, I'd recommend the first one because, you know, start at the beginning and finish at the end.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Anyway, I'll end that here.
Bye. Bye.